Welcome back for the second part of this episode of I Love My Tools, the radio show. We're going to continue sharing those little subtle tips and tricks that nobody tells you about, and you'll never hear from any other entrepreneurial training program. So I'm going to be sharing those here. And remember, those are all part of the Anyone Can Win entrepreneurial training program that we do right here on America's Blind Tradesman YouTube channel. You might want to subscribe to get all those details. Now let's get on with part 2 of the show.
Okay, we are back. And this is Mike DeZino, America's Blind Tradesman, here at I Love My Tools, the radio show. Okay, that was Johnny Paycheck with Take This Job and Shove It. And as we've mentioned, some of us do that. Some of us just say, you know what? The man I'm working for, or the gal I'm working for, might be not as smart as I am, and I think I could do this better. And half of us are right and half of us are wrong. Actually, the stats from the Small Business Administration is that 90% are wrong and 10% are right, and half of them don't make it 5 years, and so only 5 out of 100 go on to build a successful business. However, that's a business, but in the trades, it's a lot better, because if you got a trade and you know what you're doing, it's really easy to transition into self-employment in the trades. If you go on your own in the trades, let's say you're working for somebody doing something, you will earn anywhere from 1.5 to double your annual income by doing it for yourself and working for yourself. And in fact, Mike Rowe, who has a great television show on the Discovery Channel called America's Dirtiest Jobs, and he does some disgusting things that I wouldn't do for money, I'll tell you. He said that of all those people he's ever filmed for all those seasons of America's Dirtiest Jobs, only 2 of those people weren't multi-millionaires. And when you see what the jobs are, you meet some of the folks on camera. They're plain ordinary folks who just found something and do it to excess and get rich at doing it. And I'm telling you, there's a better financial future in the trades for most than there is on Wall Street, especially when you factor in jail time and having to leave the country and go into a witness protection program and all that when you rat out everybody at the bank that's corrupt. Anyway, so let's talk about how to become self-employed in the trades. And if you decide to make that move, I'm going to back this up just one statement before, and that's that what I'm about to say is for everybody, even if you don't become self-employed, everybody should have a business card. Everybody should have a business card. Even if you don't have a business yet, you should get used to carrying a business card. If you are employed, ask your boss for some business cards so you can promote his business. You're out there in the real world. Don't you want your boss to get extra business and stuff? Because you know what? Those people come with your card and hand it to them and say, hey, your employee gave me one of your cards and I'd like you to come out. He sees you as a team player. That doesn't hurt you. Trust me. It moves you up in the organization. And not only that, on the times when the conversation is of more personal nature, I don't think your boss would mind if a couple of the cards went out with your home number written on the back. And I know that served me well when I was out and about and single and working in the trades. There was a possibility of a date for Friday night. So sometimes the cards come in handy and they look professional. So agree upon your boss what they want to call you for a title and get your name and your boss's company on that card and get those cards. Get used to that simple little thing, because you know what, if you ever decide to go on your own, don't wait till then to learn how to pass out a card. Be passing them out now, and I'll be sharing that. We'll be doing a mentoring program for people that want to become self-employed in the trades, because I have case studies of 4 businesses I started, all of which became multi-million-dollar businesses, and the longest one took 3 years and 5 months to reach that status. And there's some very simple things to do. And by the way, the reason I'm picking those 4 businesses of all the businesses I've started over the years and had fun with and made money with is those are the 4 I started for less than $100 into multi-million-dollar businesses. So we'll be talking about how to do that. But if you're becoming self-employed, there's a few basic things you need to think about. Protection, protection, protection. No, well, maybe if you're running an escort service, you would worry about STDs and things, but I'm not talking about that kind of protection, and I'm not talking about carrying a gun, okay? Your Second Amendment right is your own business. I'm talking about proper insurances and proper legal structure for your businesses so that you don't end up losing everything you've worked for 20 or 30 years. And if you're going to be a tradesperson, you should explore basic contractor's insurance of various types, liability insurance, to protect you and to protect the people you are working for. There's some advantages, and I'll talk about that in a minute, why you actually want that insurance, but you really should get that. And it's more than just insurance. You should incorporate your business also. Incorporating at one time was a big deal, and you needed accountants and you needed lawyers and all that. There's things like LegalZoom that you can go up there and take advantage of. You see their ads on TV, and there's some internet discount attorneys where you can just basically buy the paperwork and file it yourself. It's not that hard to do. There are certain states that are advantageous depending upon your type of business that you would want to incorporate in. You may need more than one corporation, but they're not all that hard to do. And the annual filing fees are not all that expensive when you consider that the protection you get. Because if your business is being run in a corporation and you follow the rules and something goes wrong, they can sue the corporation. And we'll be talking about this when we do the mentoring class on how to be self-employed in the trades and start a business, et cetera, et cetera. But there are ways to actually protect your assets legally so that if you are sued, you don't get kicked all the way back to the bottom of the mountain and got to start all over again climbing back up the mountain. There's a way to hold on to things that is perfectly legal. It's what the big boys do, and you need to know some of those things so you don't have to start over again from zero with nothing and go out and get 3 part-time jobs and start rebuilding yourself for the next 10 years. You can also get personal liability insurance, which is one I like a lot, which basically insures you all by yourself against all kinds of things. You know, you borrow a friend's car and you're driving and God forbid there's an accident and somebody gets seriously injured or worse, and they're coming after you because the friend says, well, he didn't have my permission to drive my car, or his friend's insurance says, well, we're not covering you because you're not the authorized driver, or whatever nonsense. Personal liability insurance covers you. It's very cheap. Very, very, very cheap. You're probably looking at about $200 for anywhere from $2 to $5 million in coverage, depending upon the state you live in and what company you're talking to, and you get it right from your same agent who sells you your homeowner's insurance. Or if you're young and you don't own a home, then find out who your parents' agent is for their home, or your grandma or something, and find out and go talk to them, because it's an interesting concept. Because say you have a $5 million personal liability policy. Well, here's what's really cool about it. The insurance company is going to spend a lot of money on lawyers to defend you, to keep from having to pay out that $5 million on your behalf. And if it costs $50,000 or $100,000 or $250,000 or $500,000 for lawyers that you could not afford, they're going to put in that time and money because they're not going to want to pay out the $5 million. And it's a beautiful way of staying very well protected, and especially in this very litigious society we live in, where people just love to litigate and sue each other all the time. It's a great way to protect your assets. Here's another point. If you're helping your children or a cousin or a friend and you're loaning them money to start a business and you're waiting for them to pay you back the money, let's say you spot a friend $25,000, so he can buy a truck and he can buy, let's say, a grass cutting machine, a Husqvarna or something. And you've got it all in your name, because until he pays you back, you're not going to put the title in his name. Mistake, mistake, mistake. Put all the titles and everything in his name or her name, and you just take a lien against it all with a payment note. You file a note against it, a UCC lien, and you file a note against it, and you lien it. That truck or vehicle, you go down the motor vehicle or where you got to go, and you file a lien against the title so that he can't sell that truck until the lien is cleared. And same goes for the equipment. You put a UCC on it, which is under the Uniform Commercial Code. You can lien that equipment because you're owed money on it. He can't sell it or anything else, give clear title to it or anything by the registry number or license number, VIN number, whatever's on it, serial number, and until you're paid back. The reason you do that is because if it's in your name and he messes up, He just goes Johnny hop skipping down the road. And if he wasn't righteous and didn't have the insurances and everything, they're coming after you, the homeowner, the person with the bank account and the job who had the 25 grand to begin with. They'll sue you because you're the owner of the equipment legally then. So don't be the owner of it. Be the financier of it, but don't be the owner of it. And it's good that you make them pay you back from cash flow, especially if it's your children or relatives, because it will teach them some discipline. It will teach them how to be a little more responsible. And again, I say you can register that, find out how to do that. I imagine up at LegalZoom they probably have some documents and stuff so that you can lien things. If not, call Motor Vehicles. They'll tell you what the process is to put a lien on something. And there's plenty of stuff you can research on the internet, how to do a UCC lien on something. And it's very, very important to do it that way because you just don't want to be in the food chain when the lawsuits start. It's the fastest way to just completely lose everything. You know, here you are thinking you're helping somebody out. You're not helping them out if it has to destroy you financially. It may seem awkward to have a friend sign a note, to make a payment schedule, to put a lien on stuff, but you know what? Something happens and they go skipping their merry way. At least you have the right to that equipment and you could at least sell it and recover some of your losses because that's always there too. That's the unpleasant side. Of course, the good book warns about neither a borrower nor a lender be, but if you get foolish and decide you think you want to help somebody, do it no differently than a bank would. And whatever you do, parents, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, uncles, aunts, best friend, don't become a cosigner. Ever. Under any circumstances. Ever. If their credit is that bad that they need you to cosign, it's 99.9% of the time it's a character defect. It's not that they just had some bad breaks. Because if they're asking you to cosign, it's just too easy, especially if it's a small amount of money. It's too easy. There's something wrong there. You just don't want to be there. People like Dave Ramsey and other financial planners will tell you never become a cosigner under any circumstances. I don't care if this is your favorite child. You just don't. You just never become a cosigner. It's just the stupidest thing you could do. I mean, you ought to be committed. People who cosign ought to be put away. I've done it. That's why I'm speaking from firsthand experience. A lot of what I'm sharing here is because I made the mistakes when I was younger. I had a construction company. I felt sorry for guys. Oh, he needed a car. He had to come to work and this and that. And I co-signed. And 3 weeks later, the guy quit the job, stopped making the payments, and I got stuck buying a car for somebody who didn't even work for me anymore. So what I'm telling you is I've done these things. It's not what to do. Fortunately, I had enough of a cash machine at the time I could recover from a $5,000 mistake. That's what that one cost me. But the bottom line is you should just never co-sign. There's too many ways today to go out there and qualify for credit. No matter what your credit score is, there's loans out there, there's credit cards, there's programs, there's all kinds of stuff, including a rent-to-own is another thing. They never do a credit check. If somebody's starting out, well, then have them rent a lawnmower. Have them go rent all that stuff to go do work or whatever because they're paying a little extra for it. They don't own it. Yes, it's a hassle. They got to get up an hour earlier before the job and go pick it up at the rental place to go take it and use it. The experience will keep them humble and keep them righteous. They will appreciate their credit better when they finally build some credit. And by the way, there are ways to rebuild credit, and we will be talking about that. And there are ways to open companies and get substantial credit for your brand new corporation in a handful of months. I've done it, and we'll be teaching that in our self-employment mentoring program that we will be doing for people who become part of the crew. Go on over to ILoveMyTools.com and join the crew. Be part of my work crew. Come on, get on over there. You'd be surprised what this old blind guy could teach you. And we're going to have some fun. I don't want to think all the stuff I learned the hard way by going to the University of Stupidity and getting a PhD. I don't want to think all that was for nothing. So I'll be gladly sharing that, and we'll be sharing that, like I say, in our self-employment mentoring courses for the people who are going into the trades or want to start their own business. So go on over there and become a part of the I Love My Tools crew over at ILoveMyTools.com. It's really simple, ILoveMyTools.com. And you can go on over there and, become part of the crew. You'll get to know what we know. We're going to be talking about a lot of great things, like how do you get financing. One of the biggest myths about starting your own business is that you need money to make money. There is never a bigger lie to only the rich get rich. Well, the rich do get richer because they know how to make the money work, so it becomes geometric after a while. But you know what? You can start making money with almost nothing in your pocket. We'll be teaching some of those skills and how to get started with just a big idea and a great dream and a good work ethic. You can get started. You don't need millions backing you. Matter of fact, some of the biggest corporations in America were started during bad economic times with shoestring budgets. You ever hear that little company, that guy up there in Washington State, Bill Gardengate or whatever his name is, the guy who started Microsoft, Yeah, they did that with less than $3,000 cash. And the guys that started Apple, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the two Steves, Steve squared there, they started by selling off their own personal stuff, pawning it, and getting $1,200 cash to build their first dozen or so machines. And they did that. IBM and UPS and FedEx, Kinko's, and all these people. I'm telling you, they're just absolutely amazing what they started with. And there is a great radio program called Legends of Success. He interviewed some of the mega millionaires in America today, including billionaires who started companies from nothing. And he interviewed them, and he's got some great interviews up on his website, legendsofsuccess.com, hosted by John Resnick out of Pennsylvania, graduate of the Wharton School of Business. He's got some great interviews there on his program, Legends of Success, and I so highly recommend it. Matter of fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put a link up at ilovemytools.com. I'm going to put a post up there about John Resnick and his radio show, Legends of Success. He had people on there like Bernie Markowitz, the guy who started Home Depot, from an idea that his employer didn't think it would work, by the way. These were people who had jobs and had just had an idea. And some of Bernie's great things he did. It's a great interview. Some of the things he did, how to fake it until you make it, how to make a store look full when you couldn't afford 10% of the merchandise in it, and stuff. He teaches some great tricks and things. The guy who started Kinko's, the guy that started McGovern. What was the company he started? Data processing for small businesses, doing payrolls and stuff. Data, I think, is the name of the company, up out of upstate New York. He was interviewed there, multi-millionaire, and Bob Sullivan, and the guy that started Star Labs, the hearing aid company that became worth Huntsman, the guy who started with plastic packaging, styrofoam packaging for eggs and stuff. I mean, all these stories are there, and you can hear Red McComb, the guy who started out selling peanuts and ended up owning the Vikings, the Green Bay Packers. Excuse me, not the Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, and now he's one of the co-owners of one of the world's largest independently owned radio networks right now. Great stories. I can't stress it enough. One of the key principles of being successful is getting around successful people. Well, sometimes you don't have to be with them in their physical presence. You can just hear their story and pick up a little nugget here and a nugget there, and you'll hear ideas and go, I could do that. I could blend that into my daily method of operation. Yeah, boy, I wish I knew this a year ago. Well, what's really important is not that you didn't know it a year ago, but now you finally know it. Put it to work. Remember, you can't benefit by that which you do not know exists. Well, now you know it exists. Great program. Legends of Success by John Resnick. And his wife, Billy, helps them out, too. Billy Resnick, she's an attorney. She helps them out, too. They're great people. And they've been very kind to me over the years with me working around trying to listen to some of the shows and stuff on their website. I couldn't get it to work and stuff, and they helped me out and showed me how I could listen to the show and everything else. They were very, very good people. But it's Legends of Success, and I can't plug them enough. And no, I don't get paid for plugging them, just to let you know. Anyway, let's take a break right here, right now, because there's a good song coming up right now, and after this song, we're going to discuss how do you take a paycheck out of a startup business.
You are listening to I Love My Tools, the radio show, with your host, Mike DeZinno, America's Blind Tradesman. And now, back to the show.
And, of course, that was the beloved Tennessee Ernie Ford and Johnny Cash singing The Lord Will Wait Till Pickin' Time. The Lord Will Wait Till Pickin' Time. What a great song. This topic is about managing your money when you're starting out, because the Lord will wait till picking time, but usually the utility company won't. And neither will your lumber suppliers or your material, your parts suppliers, or your employees need to eat too, because they can't wait till picking time to eat. And there's ways of managing the cash, and I'm just going to cover a couple of points here. Again, we'll go into a lot more detail when we start the mentoring program that I'll be doing for the crew, for the people on the ILoveMyTools.com crew who want to become self-employed in the trade. So we'll be covering a lot, because over the years, I'll tell you, they ought to send a bunch of general contractors up to Washington, D.C., because, I mean, we could stretch $50 for 3 months, or we can go through $100,000 in a week or a day sitting in the checking account, because I've done it both ways. But either way, you can make it work. And they seem to have lost that up in Washington. Washington, they only know how to do is spend big, and when they don't have it, they borrow more and spend bigger. So, which is pretty stupid. It's a failed plan. But here we go. Let's talk about managing your money. From the beginning, this is not always easy, but from the beginning, always take a paycheck, even a small paycheck. Now, this strategy that I'm going to share with you here was taught to me by a friend of mine who you will meet in a couple of weeks. We'll be doing a show. We're going to be putting together a special show on post and beam construction. And because it's very, very popular right now, you see all these various shows, the reality shows, you know, people building log cabins, building post and beam and all that. This guy did it for real. I worked with him. We used to take down 200 and 250-year-old barns and houses up in New England, mark them, move them, and rebuild them and turn them into, you know, repurpose them again so they become houses to live in and stuff. It's a great trade, but there's a lot to those old 200 and 250-year-old colonial barns, and it's a fascinating industry, and we're going to be doing at least one show and maybe actually two, because with questions and everything else, because the process is so fascinating that knowing how to cut your own mortise and tendon joint and everything else, and work with pegs and all that, work with heavy timber and stuff, and build buildings that are so strong, wind doesn't knock them down. There's a reason those buildings have stood 250 years. Quite a process. It's fascinating because, remember, they were doing all this while they were also trying to survive, while they're trying to get a crop in the ground, while they were, you know, they just hit the shores here. They had nothing. The barn was usually what they built first. So it's a very practical, pragmatic, step-by-step life that those people lived. This friend of mine that will be joining me here is who pointed this out to me when I was a young kid, and he was a little older than me, and he said, here's what you got to do, kid, and here's what you do. Even if you just write the paycheck, even if you don't have the money in the account, write it to yourself anyway and put it in the ledger and show that negative balance in there so that you can cash it later when you do have the money. When you do finish the job this week and you get paid, then you cash your check. What he told me was nobody could continue to work forever without feeling that you're getting a paycheck. He said, at least you're getting a paycheck. And actually, you work yourself a budget so that after a while, after a year or two of being self-employed in the trades, you pretty much know what your cash flow is. And you work an appropriate budget and live with between the means, and that's what I learned to do. And then, of course, when the cash was fat during the height of the work season up in New England, which usually meant the summer, usually by May or June, caught up on all the past bills from winter and everything else, caught up. And there were some fat months in July and August, and that's when we made large purchases. That's when you went and bought a new vehicle, or that's when you got a washing machine or a refrigerator or whatever, did some stuff around the house. And then come the middle of August, the end of August, started saving those acorns up for the long winter ahead, because you didn't know what the winter was going to bring. And if you were still working on October 31st, that was pretty good. And as you got close to the holidays, nobody wanted you underfoot in their home unless it was an emergency. Then come January and February, the snows fly in January and March in most of the Northeast. And so there was a way to live and live within your means, but it all started down from working a budget. You did not get extravagant. There were too many guys I see get jammed up. They get a big deposit on a job, and rather than keep that deposit as sacred to do that job, they take that money and that became the down payment on their Cadillac. Well, you can't eat a Cadillac. And you can't even trade a Cadillac without a loss for a bunch of 2x4s and a keg of nails if you needed it. So you don't make those mistakes. You live within your means, and you let the cash accumulate so that you get an idea of what your business pays you so that you have a steady paycheck coming in. Because I will tell you, if you're talking about a family life as a self-employed tradesperson, there is nothing that will kill the romance like bad finance. I will tell you that. You men out there, if you're in a traditional marriage where mama's at home with the little ones, and et cetera, mama's got to know that she's got grocery money every week, the little ones are taken care of, and you're taken care of, and there's groceries in the refrigerator, and the nest is okay. And for those of you that have the reverse going, and you're the stay-at-home dad, and mama's out working, mama's got to know that her hard efforts away from the family all day are amounting to something because you're managing the household properly. And it works both ways. But this is why I said, if you get married, you got to marry well. You got to marry somebody with a work ethic and somebody who understands the self-discipline of not now. Somebody who understands to say no. Somebody who knows how to accept the word no from themselves to themselves. It's one thing learning it to hear it from someone else. It's another thing, can you say no to you and your impulses? And again, Dave Ramsey, nationally known speaker on getting out of debt out of Atlanta, he's got some great stuff over at Financial Peace University at his website there. And you can go to daveramsey.com. You can go see what he's got going on over there. Some great advice. But write yourself that paycheck and hold it. And when you can cash it, cash it. Hopefully you won't have to go too long before you can cash it. If you're having that problem, then you're doing something wrong with your business. You're either underemployed, or you didn't properly structure your work, or you're not getting enough work knocked out in a week, because you should never be more than a week or two away from a paycheck, ever, as self-employed. I don't care how big the job is, then you needed to negotiate it better, and again, so that you get progress payments. And again, that's more we'll teach on the mentoring program, the self-employment mentoring program we will do with the crew members over at the I Love My Tools website. Okay, keep simple bookkeeping. If you have a computer, that's really easy to do today. There's all kinds of simple money management software. There's QuickBooks, and there's Quick Money and Quick In and all this other stuff that you can do. Most of your computers today come with a basic fundamental bookkeeping program. You don't need anything elaborate. You really don't. Or you can just do checkbook accounting, where you keep your checkbook ledger up to date in the day. That's the way I ran my businesses when I got my first computer in '87 and learned how to use it. I just took a simple spreadsheet. At the time I was running DOS 2.0, and I was running Lotus 1.2, I think it was, and I just created a simple spreadsheet that mirrored my checkbook, except I put one extra column in. I just made sure that every time I made a deposit, and every time I made a check, and every time interest was earned or whatever, or a fee was charged, it got all entered into that spreadsheet. And then I added one extra column of codes. And I totally made the codes up myself, because, see, in a spreadsheet you could instantly sort. And if it was phone bills I paid for the business, it was PHN. And if it was labor, it was LAB. And if it was materials, it was MAT. And if it was something related to a specific job, I put the person's name in, Smith, Jones, Delavecchio, whatever their name was. That was the code. So that I could just simply sort the computer and instantly see all of that single category. And then I could just print that sheet, and after a year of doing that, I could just print those sheets in 45 minutes on an old dot matrix printer, throw them in a binder, and hand them to my accountant and say, tell me what I got to pay for taxes. It was all there. It was really simple to do. It just took the discipline to sit down at the end of the week or once a month, whenever, and just simply sit in front of the computer and type in every check, every deposit, every fee, and everything. And it isn't all that much. I mean, you're running a small business. It's not like you're going to have 55 checks a week that you're writing out of the account. Probably if you're doing 8 or 10, that's a lot. It doesn't take all that long to do that. And maybe that good partner of yours, your significant other, could keep up with it for you. When you get the statement in, you just type it all into the computer. You can do it that way too. But again, today there's all this software and everything else that you can do this with. It's a simple system, a cheap computer and a simple spreadsheet piece of software, and you could do a bookkeeping system that'll more than meet your needs. You could get deeper into it. You could start seeing if what you estimated on a job, if you're working by contract, what you estimated on the job was equal to came out to be what your estimate was. Are you behind your estimate or ahead of your estimate? Are you losing money or are you making what you thought? Or are you doing better than you thought? Because that's an important metric for you to know. Because if you didn't make money, you got to know why. If you made money, you got to know, okay, I made money on this job. How can I duplicate that again? Because you don't want to be losing money. And we all have to learn these basics of our own businesses, our style of working, the marketplace we're in. You need to learn these things. And we'll be talking about how do you go about keeping the metrics and keeping control of all this when we do the mentoring program. But, basically what it comes down to, those who learn, earn. Those who don't, won't. And those who don't learn, don't earn. It's that simple. That's what it comes down to. It falls on you. That's why you're going to get paid more than being somebody's employee. You want to stay dead from the neck up? Great. You want to be told what to do? Great. The world is full of people that if you hand them a shovel and point and say, dig a hole right there, they'll dig it. They're not the ones who make the big money. The guy who bought the shovel and knows where the hole has to be dug, he's the guy that makes the big money. Because that's the big myth about the blue-collar jobs, the trades, that it's all physical. And nothing could be further from the truth. There isn't a day that I was in the trades that I didn't have to majorly engage my mind into the project every step of the way. I'm telling you, your brain is your biggest tool that you'll own when you're on these jobs. When you're estimating, when you're counting, when you're calculating, when you're figuring, when you're tracking the job, when you're looking around the job site, when you're trying to review what you did. And another thing, too, is keep a journal. There's nothing more basic. If you got a little notebook, you write in there. Write what happened that day. If a job lost money, write down the fact that, you bid the job for 10 days and it rained for 7. Write little things in that so that 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, you can look through the journal and you could say, well, that's typical for July. That's typical for June in this part of the country. You didn't expect that this would happen or that would happen. And you write all that down. That becomes your college. That little journal becomes worth its weight in gold, especially when you are getting ready to hand your business over someday and you've built a successful business and it's 25, 30 years down the road and it's time for your children to take over or your brother-in-law or something happens to you and your spouse has got to take the business over. All that journal you wrote down, there's your wisdom. There's your heritage you're passing on to your family, all the things you learned. And it's a great way to do it. And again, we'll talk more about this when we're doing this formally, because I could do 2 hours on that subject alone, reading journal entries and stuff from years ago that I wrote. Why don't we take a break right now? Let's go hear from Bob Seeger, because if you build a business, you're going to want it solid like a rock.
You are listening to an episode of I Love My Tools, the radio show, with your show host, Mike DeZinno, America's blind tradesman. And now, let's get back to the show.
All right. Like a Rock, Mr. Bob Seeger. I love that song, Like a Rock. All those hustlers and their schemes. Yeah, and I still have my dreams. I love that line. Somebody has to become the rock in your family. Not the rock and roller. No, that's okay, too. I did that, too, when I was younger. But somebody has to become the rock in your family, the financial rock, the rock of trust, the rock of honor, the rock of dignity, the rock of, when you say it, it's gospel. And somebody has to be economic ground zero in your family. Somebody has to take that on. You, in this generation, you can be that person. You can end up being that painting above the fireplace that generations from now in your family look at it. They never knew you, but they walk by that painting every day saying, thank you, great-grandpa, whomever, or great-grandma, whomever, who had the guts to do it differently. You can break the chain of poverty in your family. You can become the financial rock. You can become the ground zero of economic, multi-generational financial blessings and security in your family, and it can all start with you. That the future generations revere and hold in high esteem, it could be you. Just like on Dallas, when JR's painting was above the fireplace, or his father was, or whatever. For those of you that remember that old TV show, I never saw the painting. People told me it was there. Start your money education now. Stop being ignorant about success in many areas. Success is a big term. People who aren't successful, it's because they don't study success, they don't learn about success, they don't eat, sleep, and drink it. They got time for doom and gloom and what-if scenarios and all this other stuff. Success is a fine art. It's like a wine. You have to become a connoisseur of success. And you should be reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, Chicken Soup for the Soul by Jack Canfield. Excellent stories in there about people who were up against adversities and not only got by, not only survived, but thrived, became bigger and better. Books like Good to Great, books like Think and Grow Rich, books like The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, Why We Want You to Be Rich, the book that he and Robert Kiyosaki co-authored together. Great book. There's so much books out there on the subject of success that why do you want to listen to all the whiners and complainers and losers in the world? Start rubbing elbows with like-minded people that really want to go somewhere in their life. One of the vehicles, and we could talk about this during the mentoring program, is real estate. Who better to own real estate or work in an industry that's heavily equipment based, like trucking or something, than somebody in the trades who knows how to fix things and keep it running? That kind of machinery that needs upkeep to keep producing. Who better than people in the trades to own those kind of businesses? Because we can do our own work. We don't get eaten alive. And when we're so blessed that we don't have the time to do our own work, or we choose not to, we don't get ripped off either, because we know when somebody's jerking us around and lying to us about something. I'll share a story. And of course, in the mentoring program, I'll go into this with a little bit more detail. But here's the bottom line. I was typical working stiff. And I was doing little things, and I got my name around town, and banks would call me to board up buildings they were foreclosing, or if they had some absentee landlord who skipped town, and they wanted someone to knock on the door and collect the rents and fix the leaky faucets and stuff, they'd call me to do that. And one day a bank said to me, you'd really make my job a lot easier if you just own those buildings, because I know I could reach you with a phone call. And I said, well, I can't buy a building. I don't have any money. Well, I started working on that problem. And those no money down real estate courses they talk about, those are really true if you know what you're doing. Now, I hadn't taken one at that point, but I structured a deal where I bought 2 income properties side by side that were a problem for the bank. And I was always there doing the repairs, so I knew the buildings well. It was basically a management issue. The owner was absentee, and the guy he hired was not the right guy for the job. So one day there was a knock at my door. There was a cardboard box with checkbooks and everything in it and receipts and everything, and the guy quit. He said, I don't want to be the manager no more. I can't do this. It's too hard. Too hard? He wasn't doing anything. That was the biggest problem. Nobody knew who he was. They thought I was the manager because I was always the guy there fixing stuff. We put together a deal, and I will explain step by step what I did, but I basically bought those 2 buildings for $29 cash out of my pocket, which I did not have, by the way. It was February 28th, though, and I knew the next day was March 1st, and I could collect the rents. So I wrote the $29 out of my checking account and covered it the next day from the rents. And that's how I got started in no money down real estate. Once I caught on to what the game was all about and how it worked, and because I was a tradesperson and I could make repairs and stuff, 37 months later, I was sitting on $4.3 million worth of real estate. Not one penny of it was funded out of my carpenter's paycheck. It was all self-funded. It all stood on its own by itself. That was a blessing. Then I lost it all. Not because it was bad, because I didn't do what we talked about in the front of this call about asset protection, how to protect yourself. I didn't do that. That's where I learned how to do that. And it was all gone in 6 weeks because of 2 people who didn't pay me for large jobs I was doing for them as a carpenter. They knew how to protect their assets. 4 months before they told me they were broke and weren't going to pay me, they had already moved all their assets into protected trusts. They were set up right. I wasn't. So I was the one who took the fall. But guess what? It didn't take all that long to rebuild myself and get back on my feet again. The first time it took 37 months. The next time it only took 14 months to get back on top again. See, the first time you do anything, it's a goal. That's all it is. It's a goal. You're hoping you can do it. It's a goal. But having done it once, it now is a skill, and you can duplicate it again anytime you want. 7 years ago, I was wiped out financially by a con man, kind of a Bernie Madoff thing. Guy was a high-level corporate officer in one of my corporations. I didn't know he was the guy that the FBI had been after since 1986. He was recommended by a friend, and the friend had a stroke, so I couldn't communicate with the friend. So over 2 years, as I saw strange little things going on, I couldn't call my friend up and say, hey, are you sure this guy's okay? Well, we found out he wasn't. It didn't take all that long. Once I discovered what was going on, it only took 3-4 weeks to circle the wagons, and I didn't lose anything. I mean, I lost what he stole and what he misappropriated. I mean, I lost that. But I didn't lose my home. I didn't lose my sources of income. All that just kept going. It would have devastated most people in America today because most people aren't set up for proper asset protection. Husbands and wives do everything jointly. Big mistake. Your credit should remain separate. One of you runs into a problem, you still got the other one with the good credit. Big mistake to put both names on the house. There's other ways of handling estate planning a lot smarter. But if one of you is the driver in a car and you have an accident and the insurance company walks away from you and it doesn't cover the whole thing, they don't take just half the house, your half, they take the whole house. There's a lot of stuff to know about this stuff, again, to protect yourself. We'll be talking about that when we're doing the mentoring program, because nothing's worse than having somebody whose idea of getting rich is a good lawsuit against somebody who's busted their butt all their life for 30 years to get ahead. And there's takers out there and there's schemers. That's why I love that line. I stood tall, I stood above it all the hustlers in their schemes. And I still have my dreams. And I love that line. Thank you, Bob Seger, for that line. It is so true. Anyway, you are listening to American Patriot Radio. They are kind enough to give us the airtime to present to you I Love My Tools, the radio show with your host, moi, Mike DeZino, America's Blind Tradesman. And to learn more about us, to become part of the crew, why don't you head on over to ILoveMyTools.com, our website. Why don't you just join the crew? Why don't you read some of the posts there, see some of the videos, wave at me. I may or may not wave back at you from some of the how-to videos I have up there featuring different pieces of machinery. We'll be putting more up. We're in the process of doing quite a bit with that actually right now. It's a labor of love. It's fun. You want to see a blind guy use a table saw, an old Rockwell Delta table saw without cutting off his fingers, you can go see that there. It's kind of like watching NASCAR, I guess, waiting for a wreck. People have told me that it's nerve-wracking to watch some of the stuff I do. My fingers apparently are very close to the blade. I'm not aware of that. There's some other great information over there that's a lot more valuable than the drama of whether or not I'm going to mess up. If you have questions, just send them on into questions at ilovemytools.com. Comments at ilovemytools.com. We keep everything simple here, nails on the left, hammers on the right, just keep it all organized. And for those of you that want to have a little fun and see if you're smarter than a blind tradesman, why don't you go on over to ilovemytools.com and just go on out to our Chrome or Facebook apps and take some of the quizzes we've got there and see what your score would be. These are all different trades I've worked in my life, and it's all fun, and it's a great way to earn a living. It's a healthy way to earn a living. When I was younger, I couldn't believe people would pay me money to work outside in the sun and the beautiful weather and in the snow and in the rain and everything, and pay me money to get a suntan, to be outdoors, to be healthy, to grow up strong. Everybody else has got the flu, and everybody else has got all these problems in later life and stuff, and the people in the trades. As long as you're not abusing tobacco or alcohol or drugs or other substances or whatever, and as long as you're, taking care of yourself and eating healthy, the hard physical work doesn't hurt you, and for sure the mental work keeps your mind going for years. It's amazing some of the old-timers I met in the trades who are still going strong at 85, 90 years old, could still drive 16-penny spikes in 3 shots. Amazing. It's a healthy way to live. I have a special song I'm going to close with, okay? Because if you work hard in the trades and you become that person, ground zero for the financial stability in your family, and you do some of the things we're going to be putting forth here tonight, we have put forth here tonight, and we'll be offering in the mentoring program, there's just a great way to live. And even though you're tired, and even though you're weary, And even though life is hard at times, when you see how your family is benefited by your work, how you've taken care of your generation, you've taken care of you and your spouse and your family, your immediate family, you've taken care of your grandchildren, you've set everybody up, it's worth it all. And you know, Tennessee Ernie Ford has a song called So Tired and Weary. It's actually a gospel hymn. And it's a great way, I thought, to end the show tonight, because you know what? That's what it's about. It's about a life of good hard work, good accomplishment, loving relationships, taking care of your responsibilities, making sure that you're a good steward of those blessings the good Lord has given you in your life. Your reward is elsewhere. Don't look for justice in this world. Just look for peace of mind and just carry on. Your job is too important to be distracted by the takers of the world, the fakers of the world, and the people who are never going to get anything done because they can't even get out of their own way. You're better than that. Rise above it. Carry on. And remember, as always, stay safe, stay productive, and keep loving those tools. Take care of yourselves. America and American workers, God bless you all. You are the backbone of the mighty economic engine we call the great American dream.
Hey, that wraps up this episode of I Love My Tools, the radio show. But if you'd like to know more of the inside skivvy on the America's Blind Tradesman website and the America's Blind Tradesman YouTube channel, and for sure the Anyone Can Win Entrepreneurial Training Program, if you want to be kept in the loop as we post videos for that, just click on that subscribe to our channel button right there. And by the way, if you're finding this information helpful, it'd be great if you could click the like button also and help us help others. We'll see you in the next video.